The last few years, everyone is trying to run some kind of AI pilot, MVP, POC, but not every organization is moving forward into something larger, which we call AI factory. If you're trying to move from the scattered experiments with your AI into something that is large scale, stay with us.
Every serious company today has AI pilots. Almost none have an AI factory, a governed, scalable way to run AI as a business capability. In this session, we'll talk about what has to be true in your organization to get from pilots to an AI operating model.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of AI and Data Talks. My name is Magdalena Okrzeja, I'm AI strategist at DS-Stream, and with me today, Carlos Navarro. Carlos is also our strategist and advisor, and with years of experience in enterprise, Carlos worked with many different infrastructures of data, now artificial intelligence, and today we're going to talk about something that is called AI factory. Very vague term, not everyone may know what does it mean. So if you could explain a little bit the way you explain to the business what AI factory really means.
Super happy to have this conversation. I think it's the right timing. A lot of companies are talking about AI factory. And first of all, what I want to say is that the term factory is not something new. So for us that have been a long time in the IT industry, we've seen factory terms used over many years, whether it was BI, data, now it's AI, but it's not really something new, right? And at the end, without going into the exact definition, when we talk about factory, is really what it represents is like the increase in maturity a company wants to establish, once they want to deliver their specific products, again, whether it's BI, data, or AI. So what we always see is that whenever there's a disruption in technology, there's always like these stages. There's the first stage where there's super excitement, everybody starts building solutions, experimenting, and a lot of solutions are delivered, but a lot of them don't have any value. There's a lot of waste, a lot of them are repeated. So it gets to a moment when after this like experimentation, a company realizes that they need to start standardizing the way they deliver. They need to start becoming more repeatable in the way they are delivering the products. And most important, they have to have this productivity or predictive cost and speed. And that's what this operating at scale really means. So in terms of an AI factory, I think these periods of where experimentation POCs have completed, companies are now at the stage of, okay, now we really start to deliver efficiently. And that's why they decide to go with AI Factory. That's why I think it's a great timing to talk about this topic.
And the name is probably intentional, factory, right? Because we, as you said, we want something repetitive that large companies can implement and really scale, right? It's great that you mentioned readiness. And I want to talk a little bit about readiness because that's a huge topic before you start doing anything. What you have seen already in the companies, how they fall, like what kind of, because I assume that it's not like everyone is doing like everything perfectly with AI. Like you've probably seen some repetitive cases where the customers fall.
Yeah, I will refer a lot to like the past and past experiences and things we've seen before delivering other kind of products, because I think there's a lot of successes that we've had in the past, but I think a lot of failures, and the importance is how we take those failures and apply them to improve to what we do now. So for me, like in the concept of factory, what I always saw as the biggest issue was that companies were building solutions that nobody was using or very few people were using. So there was a lot of focus on delivering platform solutions, but then once the solutions were there, nobody was using it. And the reason was because there wasn't effort done at the beginning to get the company ready, specifically the people, so they can use these solutions. So what I see is super critical in terms of this AI readiness is that as we build solutions, as we build a factory, we need to do it in parallel with building the skills of people, building the AI literacy, and get them ready to use these solutions.
Okay. Yeah, and what actually you see more, like customers on this very, very early stage, where they have no idea what exactly AI factory is, or rather you see customers coming to you with like we want to scale, we want to optimize? Like where is the market right now?
I still see most of companies, I mean, there's always like these big enterprises that are super mature, but if we look at the broader companies, they are still at the stage that we need to start leveraging AI for value. We've maybe done some POCs experiment, but we've still not seen the value. What do we have to do to really realize the value of AI for competitive advantage? Because they also see that other companies start to use AI, their competitors use AI, and they are even maybe using it, but not at the level that it drives the impact that they're looking for.
You mentioned POC, and so I wanted to talk about that a little bit. Yeah, and maybe I'll start with something that I feel strongly about POCs, especially when you implement such complex systems, is that we see a lot of mistakes starting with something maybe not important for the organization, right? And my impression is that where companies are doing this in a totally wrong way, right? So they think that when you implement like a small piece of AI, give it to the organization, then you have something proven. Which probably in reality it's not the case, because organization is more about just some agent, right? You need this entire infrastructure behind it, right? What's your take
I
on
think
that?
in the end, the key thing is that whatever you deliver, it has to have the business value and the impact.
Yeah.
So even if you're delivering a POC and the POC is delivering good results, if then it doesn't really go into some kind of impact, then it's just going to stay at a small solution. I like this phrase that's about innovation. When you say innovation without impact is like an idea for promise, with a promise, right? It's not something that sounds great, but if it doesn't have this impact, I think then there's not really the value we're looking for. So I agree that many times there's the successes are measured in number of POCs, but the success should be measured more in what's really the impact we are delivering out of this, and that needs to consider different factors.
Yeah, and what do you see? Like, what's the first use case that customers may see the biggest value? Like, because I assume that probably when they come to you, they have no idea. They have no idea where to start, or maybe they have something implemented, but it's not something that they can really scale. So, what's your advice if you come up with like best scenario for them to really see this value that you mentioned?
So we talked before about AI readiness. For me, is a use case that is AI ready, and AI ready touches different aspects. So AI readiness from a technical perspective, where we have the whole topic of data, big topic, and technically that is use case is AI ready, but then also from the people perspective that it's AI ready, because I've heard a lot and seen a lot of POCs that show huge value, but the users, they don't want to use it for different reasons. Some are afraid that they're going to be replaced by these solutions, or some just don't see how to embed it in their day-to-day workflow. But the people that are going to be using the solutions have to be also AI ready. So it's the AI readiness, I put it at the front, even though many times what I see is companies more think of these are like cool use cases where we can shine with AI, and let's first show this as the great case. They are promoted a lot, but again, going back to the value, they don't bring value.
Yeah, and that requires really like a patience from the customer, and that's maybe not something that is easy for us to explain, right? Yeah,
I mean, it's always, many times, especially with these technologies, like delivering the shiny new thing, or case that's the thing. We always recommend looking also to the future and whatever you're building, what is the impact, because in the end it's also a responsibility to recommend the solutions that are going to bring value to customers. I think there's a lot of always, especially when I remember when Gen AI started, like you looked at LinkedIn and everybody was delivering cool things with Gen AI, but then you were going to the enterprise and nobody was using it. Something was missing, because these solutions, they were cool, but they were useless. So we recommend always to look at the value, because that's going to bring you this long-term return.
Yes, and you mentioned also something about responsibility of the implementation. And I think There is one element which is maybe not such a hype, which is governance. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the governance with you. From my perspective, I'm coming slightly more from the technical roles. So for me, when I think of governance, it's like the security thing. You have to apply certain rules, who can get access to what kind of data, right? So you have to like orchestrate this very unpopular layer of AI that you may feel like it really restrict the organization to just get the full capability of AI. But I think governance, from your perspective, probably is something.
Yeah, I mean, governance is never popular.
Yeah.
I worked many years in data governance, and nobody wanted to talk about data governance.
Exactly.
They wanted to talk before about the fancy visual dashboards or anything, but governance was always like the taboo topic. Nobody wanted to talk about it. It's always seen like these rigid processes that are stopping innovation, flexibility, agility. But again, if we look to the past, it's always like governance always appears, and it's appearing again now in AI, because after building all these solutions, many companies have started having issues with legal regulations, with delivering solutions that bring high risk. So again, governance is becoming a hot topic. And we always recommend to start with governance from the very start.
Yeah.
But most of our companies are more like being reactive, except that many of industries that are already highly regulated and need to look at governance, but many of them look at it more like reactively. We recommend to start from it from the very early stages.
Yes, you mentioned something extremely important, and I think we have to emphasize that for everyone listening to our conversation, because what we see very often is that customers are taking this very small piece of example, could bring the value to organization, but they forget about governance. And it's like this small POC is actually not kind of an experiment on test, what you can really scale into the larger infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of problem with that explaining. And then we can imagine that the POC went pretty good, and then we want to scale. And how you explain the customer now, it will cost like double time, double effort, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of rework there that what everyone will tell you is, why you didn't tell me before. So maybe you tell them before, so you won't have the responsibility. And I think for what is important for governance is, many people look at it as these rigid, like legal processes. There's two aspects that are as important. One is the technical governance, because like we say at the beginning, when there's a lot of these siloed projects, initiatives, if they are just left running and they're not governed, they're not properly registered, they're not properly audited, they're not properly monitored, you can have now GenAI solutions or agents running kind of freely with no governance, and this can just be exponential risk for the organization. So you need to have the technical governance to make sure what you are building is properly built according to standards, and somebody is actually making sure that they are worked properly. And then there's all the topic of legal governance, regulations, responsible AI, which has also huge implications. And both sides are important. We always look at the both sides and helping on the technical governance, solutions like catalogs, model registries, audits, observability, all these things need to be in place from the very beginning, because the consequences for a company and even for companies like us that we deliver solutions can be pretty high.
Yes, I think the observability is something really huge at start, right? Because to explain everyone listening to us what the observability is that when you give it the model to the hands of people, you also need to have in kind of your back office someone really monitoring what's going on, like what kind of interactions are happening with the system, and then really revise that and make sure if this really complies with A, security, but B, with the kind of company rules, and if the models are really telling you what you're looking for, right?
Yeah, you need to know basically what's going on in because everything grows so quickly. You cannot have people looking, monitoring. You need the systems, and now with all these agents are also going into observability. So you really need to know real time what is happening, and if anything can deliver risk for a company, it needs to be solved immediately.
So when implementing such a POC, would you say that it's not only this code, this agent, but you would recommend some rules, some governance?
Yeah, I mean, from the beginning, I mean, even I understand that the very early stages companies need to deliver quickly. So we obviously can't put very heavy processes. We need to make it agile because they always tell us, look, if we take 4 months to deliver the value, we're not going to get the budget for the future. So we need to deliver value quicker. So we need to find this balance between the speed and the governance. So even at the very early, without impacting highly cost and speed, we can start already adding certain governance aspects that can help to then in the future, eliminate any risk. But they have to be there from the beginning.
Yeah. Let's talk maybe a little bit about something that no one likes to talk, like governance, data. Data, and you know that pretty well. Like the customers come to you with the idea, oh, we want to build something new. We need that data that we don't have in a system. What do you say to them hearing that
I'm
ideas?
like a broken record. I mean, I come from a data background, so I've been working all my life in getting data ready for any kind of consumption. So whenever I talk, even now, the conversation is mostly driven around AI. Anything has to be, we talk about AI first. I always start talking about how's your data. And we know that, again, if data is not there, if it's not ready, then it's very difficult that AI will bring value. So we always need to look at the AI, at the data, and there are also ways to encourage organizations. So what I always say is we don't have to have all data perfect, but if we look at these first AI-ready solutions with the data that all organization has always data that is more ready, let's maybe start looking at that, and that can drive your use case, because that will give you the higher value.
Yeah, I would even say it should be a golden rule for a implementation, like start with what you have. Don't really bother with trying to find new data sources, because that never works.
Exactly.
That's the recipe for disaster, right?
And the rule that we've been hearing for many years of in a data science or AI project, 75 or 70% of the time you're working on data, preparing data.
Exactly.
Then the worse your data is, this 70%, if we're talking about a project of 4 or 5 months, we're spending 3 months just preparing data, right? And we're talking about longer than, this will just extend. So the data is absolutely critical.
Yeah, true. Let's maybe bring some use cases so people can imagine what we're really talking about, what the AI factory can do for us. So I have that example in my head right now from, let's say, my old days, kind of the supply chain system, right? It's a kind of big concept, but let's say someone wants to apply this AI factory kind of model to supply chain, selecting, for example, scoring the suppliers, right? So I assume that when you bring the governance layer, you're probably securing the access to the certain data about the providers, because this is very delicate topic, right? Like if you choose in the wrong way the supplier, you may have a big problem, especially if you're producing some hardware, right? So then I could imagine that the governance would be kind of the rules of kind of selection to select such a supplier, score them. What else? Probably the kind of, not everyone should get access to that kind of data, right?
I mean, the data governance, I mean, whatever, if you're building the AI solution, if you have the bad governance, it's just going to increase the risk if the data is not there. So the first thing, you need to do a risk assessment of the data that you're going to be using, the readiness, the quality, and then score, as you mentioned, the data that we have ready, and select those that we can start working on. Then there's aspects more technical, how easy it is to access it, how easy it is to bring it into your platform, because there's also all the aspect of data operations, how we're going to ingest the data. There's all the technical. So there's the readiness I mentioned, the governance, and then the feasibility of building
and
it.
probably a couple of different models that could do something else for us with this scoring. But let's say, imagine like someone wants to build like a POC on the top of that. Like that's a large topic. So I can imagine that probably the POC could be just, for example, summary of a history of the supplier. Is that a good idea for starting?
Because in the end, the idea at the beginning, if you want something quick, is use, let's say, models out of the box, and the models are well built on generic use cases. So anything around, summarization, reading documents, and anything that is more like generic, that's going to be a good case because you can take powerful model out of the box and it will do a pretty good job. If you want then to go into something more specific and more applied to your business, where you need to bring some RAG or more information about relative to the company, or maybe tweak a bit the model, that will take more time. But taking like these models out of the box, these simple use cases are a good way because they can show very rapid value, and to encourage people to then continue and keep growing the system and improving the performance.
Yeah. So from your experience, what kind of ideas for AI factory customers have? What's the spectrum of ideas?
I think normally what I see more than specific ideas is the functions in the company. So there's always these functions that are more ready to start working with AI or have cases with AI. Seen, for example, sales marketing organization, they also, because they have a bit less risk, like you talk about, functions like HR is a bit more complicated. Finance, because they work also a lot with data and are also quite willing to work on this. But I think normally it's more per function than the actual use case. Then when you dive into each function, they have like different areas they will be working on.
Okay. Let's maybe leave the POCs for now and the examples, and I want to go back again to the business value, to the business problems with the implementation. And in IT, we have something called the triangle, right? We have this cost, quality, and speed issue, right? That's the old school kind of triangle you have to cover with every project, and you have to explain someone who's investing that you cannot have it all, right? So how you tackle that? What's the balance that you're suggesting?
I think in the delivery of such products, you also have other parameters like the actual business value, which is some way it's related to quality. And then the governance and the security, which is also needs kind of embedded in quality, but because it's so important, I like to keep it out. But I think at the beginning, at the early stages, your focus has to be certainly on the speed. It has to be on security, the minimum, so you don't have to look at the top, but at least the minimum from speed, and then the business value. I mean, show the value as fast as possible. I think that the cost, obviously we cannot be looking at a huge cost. I think that will be related to the business value we can offer, because if we are showing a high business value, then the cost will always be relative to that. So I would look more in those terms, how they relate to each other.
And there's also quality, right? So the quality, how it fits into this model, because I have impression that when we have these large projects, like obviously there is a cost involved, because we're talking about something that we have to orchestrate. We have to build a layer of data, layer of like communication between, and the filter between the models and between the data on the other side, right? So everyone expects high quality. I had that impression that it's hard to explain that you cannot.
You will be surprised. So I've seen cases where delivering a solution to the business that doesn't work still perfectly, but the business sees the business value and potential, especially when we're talking about POC. When we're talking production system, there's no discussion, there has to be the quality. But at the early stages, what we are seeing is that when people see the potential, they say, okay, maybe it's not great, let's do an iteration, but they are engaged, and then they keep working on it. So I think the first iterations of such solutions from a quality perspective have to be good enough. I mean, I'm not saying obviously a bad quality, but good enough. And then you can be working on the quality, but if you get the the impact and the business value, and you get the attention of business to say, hey, this is something I can really use and will help my day-to-day work, then I think you've gone already quite far.
Yeah, that's actually, I would say, surprising these days, because when you think of these large enterprise companies, tell them that you can move fast and things can be good enough. That's probably not the way they've been doing the business. So I assume the enterprise companies has to really change for implementation like AI Factory.
But even if you look at the Gen AI solutions, like the ChatGPTs or Claude or the world, the first version, maybe we've forgotten, but the first versions, they were giving crazy answers.
That's true, yeah.
But it was amazing what they were giving. You kept using them and you kept learning, but the initial, sometimes they would giving you ridiculous. And then we started tweaking, and we started on prompt engineer, and we started working, more powerful models. But I remember my first interaction with ChatGPT, even though I was amazed how quickly it was answering my question, the answers sometimes were like completely ridiculous.
Yeah.
But the potential, you saw it, and you say, I want to keep working on it, but it needs to improve if I'm going to really use it. Now I use it every day.
Yes, but appetite is also growing, right? Because I also see kind of different approach of the business, that they really expect things that are kind of not possible. I'm not sure if that's also what you experience, but for example, when we discuss the implementation of some AI agent that is doing some insights is a huge thing right now, right? They have everything has to be insights, and then those insights are not like a kind of magical ideas, like the things that you cannot figure out by yourself. Like customers are really expecting that to happen. So. I think the appetite for what is possible, and it becomes, I think, harder and harder for us to manage that expectations, right?
Yeah, but I still prefer that. And in the old days, if I compare like the old days with BI, when we were bringing BI and visual analysis, nobody wanted to use. They preferred using Excel. What we've seen now is that AI has been adopted very quickly, especially because of these solutions like ChatGPT, Claude, which you use in your private life. I prefer that conversation where people are engaged and want to talk versus you trying to sell them that there's the value. Like we were for many years trying to show why people should use a dashboard with visual insights versus a table on Excel, which people still use.
Till today, actually, it's really hard to explain what's the value, right? Okay, value is an important topic, and with the value, what really comes is the return of investment, right? Everyone on the C-level will ask you about the return of investment. So how do you explain that? Like, what's the return for them?
That's I mean the reality is that one thing that we've seen now versus other times is the focus on TCO. When we are having to provide a solution or recommendation. So I think that's even put more emphasis than before. So companies are looking at, whenever they're delivering a solution, to clearly show the TCO and the return of investment, which basically, covering implementation, support, infrastructure, etc. So there is already from companies, there's a lot of emphasis on putting the case before building the solution. Before it was a bit more the opposite. We build the solution and then we try to show the case. But so now it's easier because we don't even need to be convincing the companies to do it. They already are coming with, show me, and in a term of 2-3 years, what is going to change? What's going to be the improvement? So that's the real. It's a simple approach. The only thing is you need to make sure that the companies are willing to do this exercise at the beginning before doing the implementation. And if the case doesn't prove that it's going to bring value, then you need to look for another case.
Yeah, and it feels like for those large companies to survive is to really bring the kind of old style startup approach, like iterate, right?
Exactly.
Sometimes break things. It's hard to say break things if you think of like a large healthcare company, but there is a shift, right? With how they have to think about investments.
Pivot and kill. I mean, I have an impression many companies are afraid of failures in POCs, but the POCs as a terminology is to prove something. You can prove it right or wrong, and then you can, depending on the result, you can either pivot to try to get a better result, or if you see really there's not going to be a result, you have to kill. And taking the decision of kill something, a product is always difficult, but you have to do it if you see that it's just going to bring waste.
True, and the failure was never in the vocabulary of those.
You always have to prove positively that that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
That wasn't the. That's why now I've seen a lot of change from POC to POVs, so proof of values, because people don't want to prove the concept; they want to prove the value. But the concept is the same. You need to first prove it.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay, Carlos, let's maybe leave people with some final thoughts. Maybe you can think of yours. I'll start maybe with mine final thought that I want people to take with them after the conversation. So for me, going back a little bit technical, I think the choice of a POC is extremely important. So it's a factory for a reason. So when you think of AI factory and this operational model for AI, the way you can scale, like when you decide what's your starting point, choose something that can really replicate in a very micro scale how the entire solution in the end would work for your organization. What's your final thought for the
I totally agree with your thought. What I would, and it's more an addition to what you say, is whatever you build with the future in mind. So think of what you are building today that is going to be usable in the future to avoid waste. And the earlier you start thinking of the future, the less you're going to have to rework, waste, different things. So I think that for me is the key thing to, even if it's small bits, you don't have to do these big investments, but think of anything that you can be doing from the very start that will help you in the future.
Yeah. Carlos, thank you so much for today's conversation, and let's leave our audience with that two thoughts at the very end. And everyone, I encourage you to follow us on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and to watch another future episodes of AI and Data Talks. Thank you.
Thank you.